Hey guys, it's Norm from Daily Disney Photo, and in the previous video that we did to this one, we took 5 different exposures: normal, 2 over, 1 underexposed, 1 overexposed, and 2 overexposed photos, merged them together in Photomatix to create this exposure that we've got here. In today's episode, we're going to be working with merged 32-bit HDR and we're the Lightroom plugin, and we're also going to be making adjustments in Lightroom as far as the 3 exposures are concerned, and then we'll do a comparison with all 3 of those. Now, one of the things that I wanted to touch on that came to mind after I finished the last video was the reason for 5 exposures. And in reality, you don't need to have 5 exposures. If I had my druthers, what I would do is have only 3 exposures, one being normal, one being 2 underexposed, and one being 2 overexposed. There's not any real advantage to having these exposures that are 1 stop overexposed and 1 stop underexposed, or here, when we've got the ones that have more extreme lighting. The reason why I have the 5 different exposures is because of the way my camera is set up. My camera has a functionality built into it where it will do automatic bracketing for me. It will do one where it will do a maximum of 5 stops, normal, 1, 2, over and underexposed, for a total of 5. Some cameras actually give you the ability to do these HDR brackets or these multiple exposure brackets, but they allow you to skip that 1 step intermediate. So you could just have 3 shots, which would be normal, 2 shots overexposed, and 2 stops underexposed. But my camera doesn't have the ability to do that. So the default for me is a bracket of 5 exposures. And that's what I work with. But if you just have the one that's 2 over, one that's normal, and one that's 2 underexposed, you're really not going to find any difference in that photograph than you would if those 3 than you would if you have the 5 that we've got. So anyway, so the next thing that we're going to do is to go to export these to the Lightroom plugin 32-bit HDR, and we're going to do that by selecting all of our images, and now we're going to unselect this one. This is the one that we modified in Photomatix, and we don't want to include that when we do this merger. We're going to do just these original 5 exposures, and we've got this one right here is this image here. If we just right click either here or down here, I think we can do it from there too. Yeah. If you just go to export and then merge to 32-bit HDR, you can just right click on that. Again, you can get to that by just doing the same thing up here. There we go, and export. And in some ways, this is very similar to what you saw in the previous video where we did Photomatix. And again, we're going to have it align images. We're going to have it crop the aligned result. And we're going to do that by having it, in this situation, by matching the features in the photo. You can also have it doing it by correcting horizontal and vertical shifts. And I've got mine set to include perspective correction. This is the one that I find that I use the most, so those are going to be the defaults for this tutorial. Again, we have the option for removing ghosts. Now, you're not going to find near the amount of control with this little plugin for removing ghosts as you will in Photomatix. Like we did on the previous one, or we had the option to in the previous one. We really didn't have any moving objects in the previous one, so we didn't use that. But you do have the option in both programs to remove ghosts. This one is just going to be a little bit more of an automated process and going to give you less control over how that happens. Again, we've also got the option to reduce noise. Again, I don't use that. We're making the adjustments in Lightroom for that. We're going to combine the images, the file name, which will look something like this here, with the suffix HDR. I like that because then when I go back and forth between images, it makes it real obvious which one, if not looking at it, which it should be, but if not, by the name alone, you can tell which one is. And after we do this, you're going to find that the image that is created by merged to 32-bit HDR at first glance really won't look that much different. So having that HDR suffix is a good thing. So we're going to have it added back to the stack of photos. So it's going to automatically come back in here, which is, again, Lightroom. It's a great thing, keeping everything organized. And I couldn't even begin to tell you what these two buttons here do. So just leave them on. If you want to play around with them and try to figure out exactly what they do, go for it. But I just leave them on, and it seems to work fine. So that's really about all there is that this program will or this plugin is going to do. And that's it. That's the entire process of the HDR. Now you could see how much quicker that was, and that's this image right here that it just spit out. Now, as I said, you probably aren't going to see a huge amount of difference between the original, which we've got right here, and this one, the 32-bit HDR, and you can tell by the name up here that this is the HDR one. The tones changed a little bit and so forth, but other than that, doesn't look a whole lot different. And then this is the one that we did in Photomatix, where you can see a really dramatic difference between the original and what we ended up with in the photograph. So let's go back to the one that 32-bit HDR just did for us, and let's talk about what it did. Basically, it has taken the information that existed in all 5 of these exposures, and it has combined them all together into one image. The information from all of those photos, as far as exposures, detail, everything else, has all been crunched down into a single file. Now, the advantage that gives us is that when we go into the development process, because we've got a lot more information to work with, we can now go in and have a lot more detail in areas. For example, we can bring the shadows up without it getting really grainy, because we've got that information from over here in this exposure where those shadows are really pumped up. So we've got a lot more detail there. Same thing on the dark side. We've got a lot of detail here in the eye, as you can see. And some of these lights, you can see little bits of detail and stuff. Same thing with the signs and the leaves back here. All of that's been combined together into this one image. So let's go ahead and go over to the development channel here. So we've got the development channel open, and I apologize for things being a little bit slow when you're recording your screen like this and you're running Lightroom and so forth. It's pretty taxing on the computer, so it took it a second to catch up there. But let's go through the process that I typically run through in Lightroom, not only just with HDR shots, but pretty much with just about every photograph that I think is worthy of posting on Flickr. It usually has received a little bit of TLC from me in Lightroom. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the white balance, and I'm going to go ahead and set it to auto. What I typically find is that's not going to be where I want it to be, but it's probably quicker than me playing around with the sliders, so it gets me kind of close. So we'll just hit auto on that. You can see how things got cooler. For me, I find that the auto tends to make things cooler than I would typically like to see them. I like my photos to have a little bit of warmth to them. I think it adds more life to them. So I'm just going to bring this blue slider down a little bit. You can see as we bring that down, we're bringing a little bit of warmth back into the light again. So this looks like a good spot for me. As far as the green magenta goes, I really don't have any issues that I can see in this photograph with that. So I'm just going to leave that one there where it's set the auto to. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do the same thing with our tone controls down here. Again, for some reason, especially you'll see with the Photomatix one that we do, it always tends to want to bump the exposure up to an extreme, which always looks ridiculous. I just pull that back down to where I think it looks good, but it kind of makes some quick adjustments. Now, the merge to 32-bit usually tends to do a little bit better. It doesn't. You can see it went up a stop and a third according to this. That's too hot. I'm going to pull that back down to where it looks good to me, and we'll say right about there, which is about 3/4 of a stop brighter than original. Don't have any issues with the contrast. That looks okay to me. The highlights. Now, this is one area that I tend to make adjustments to a lot of times. You can see it's already pulled it down to -40. The advantage that that's done to us is it's giving us some detail back in this. Let's just go ahead and set this to 0, and you can see how blown out that is. There's just no detail there at all. Everything's just blown out. It went -40. I'm going to look at that, and again, I don't even look at the slider, what the numeric value is when I'm making adjustments. I just look at the image because that's all I care about. Nobody is going to care about what number I set anything to. All they're going to care about is what the image looks like. And so somewhere probably about right in here looks good to me. And it's pretty close. I'm at -50. They picked -40. And so I'm okay with that. Shadows, they've pumped up the shadows a little bit. We might even bring that up a little bit more. Some of I'd like to see a little bit more detail in those trees back there. So we'll bring that up a little bit more, and it's going to +64. But you will notice that a lot of times when you pump the shadows up with a typical photograph, you're going to introduce a whole bunch of noise. That's just because there's no information for Lightroom to work with. Because we've merged all of those images together, we have gotten a lot more information to work with, so we can make these extreme adjustments and bringing the highlights way down and the shadows way up, because all of that information from all 5 of these exposures is now here for us to play with, so we can play with all that information in one spot. So that looks good to me. Whites, I don't really see anything there that needs to be adjusted. And the blacks look pretty good to me. Again, this is one of those areas, and I talked about this before in the previous video, where you want to make sure that you've got a solid black. If we bring this way up, you know, we have got a ton of detail, but we've really lost some of the contrast to make things pop. So you want to make sure that you keep those blacks, that you have a good solid black where there's just no detail or borderline to no detail. And so we'll do that with adjusting the black level there. Clarity, these shots, because they have so much information in them, a lot of times you're just going to find that you're just not going to have to add a whole lot of clarity to it. It already is just got so much information in it that it really does not need a whole lot. Typically, on a lot of times in photographs, I'll pump this up to +30, +40 to make the highlights and the details kind of pop a little bit better. But again, these merged 32-bit HDR ones are really just not needing anything. And very seldom do I make tweaks to vibrance and saturation. Most of the time, that's just inherent in the photo, and I leave that alone for the most part in most photographs. Next one we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and skip down. We're not going to be really making any adjustments with the tone curve, the color window, the photo that you can make an adjustments in. Split toning, for me, that's a black and white technique. We're not going to be doing that here, but we will go to detail. Let's go ahead and zoom in now. The images that I have given you to make them go faster and to reduce the bandwidth for download are 1,000 pixels wide. Usually my images and so forth are 4,000 pixels plus wide, and when I zoom in, I'm able to get in detail like this. And when I make the adjustments to sharpening, I always like to see that up close, but because this image has been minimized in size, we're not going to be able to do that, but we can get a good idea here. Sharpening, again, on this particular one, I think that we're probably not going to need to do a whole lot as far as sharpening adjustment. You can go in and tweak this setting. One of the things that you do have to be careful of is that when you increase the sharpening, you also tend to increase noise. Because this image is smaller, we're not really having that problem. I really don't see any problems with noise. If you do, the noise reduction in Lightroom is quite good, so you can bring that up to reduce any noise. But again, we really don't have a need for either one of those in this particular image. So that's going to be it for detail. In most typical photographs, though, that is something that I do bring up both in the sharpening and introduce a little bit of noise reduction if we start to get a little noisy in the shadows. The next thing that I'm going to do is in effects. Now this is something that I tend to do on a lot of my photos. My attitude towards this is that when you do it, it shouldn't be something that should be that noticeable. And what I'm talking about is vignetting. I always do negative. I never do positive. Positive is this really ugly white outside thing, which is might have purposes in dreamy portraits or something of that nature, but for my purposes, I never go this direction. It's always the other direction that I go. And the reason why I do this is that I try to bring down vignetting. I tend to bring it down because typically kind of what is the focus of my image tends to be towards the center, and by reducing the brightness of the outer edges, you tend to draw the eye towards the brightest thing, which is going to be the center. So you help guide people's eyes to what you want them to notice. So by using the vignette, by reducing the areas around the outside down just a little bit, we tend to bring the focus back in towards the middle a little bit. Now you obviously can overdo this, and I never go something like this far here. That's just too dark. And when I do a vignette, what I strive for is to control the outer edges and make them a little bit darker. So I do focus people towards the attention, towards the middle, but I don't want it to be obvious. And the way that we can see that is if I just turn this panel off and on. Why is that not doing that? Wrong panel, sorry about that. That one there. Keep clicking the wrong one. How about that one there? There we go. You can see what happens. Now, to me, if I post this image on Flickr, the fact that I have vignetted is not going to, if you think about it, yeah, you can say, yeah, he's vignetted this. Is it going to be the first thing you think of? No. And you can see what a dramatic difference that makes in pulling your attention towards the middle. We're getting a little bit borderline on this because what you can see happening is obviously the thing we want to retain is the lightness here. We're getting a little bit close with that as far as bringing that area down too. There are some adjustments that you can also make. The midpoint, which adjusts the size of that. You see it still keeps the area around the outside dark, but we've been able to pull a little bit of that back in, whether it's rounded or if it's more shape defined by the frame itself. these are things that I typically don't mess with a whole lot. I typically just go with the defaults on those. So that's about it on this particular image. Again, this is the merge to 32-bit HDR, and I'm pretty happy with the results of where we've got this one. Again, this is one of those things too that's so great about one of the things that's so great about Lightroom is it's non-destructive. So any adjustments that we make with regards to any of these sliders here are things that we can undo. And I have done this before where I've gone in and tweaked an image, left it alone, come back a day or two later, take a look at it, and feel like something just doesn't look right to me, and go in and make an adjustment to it. And again, because everything is non-destructive and there's no harm, you never really lose anything by making these adjustments. So that's one of the reasons why I like Lightroom so much. Now let's go ahead and go to the one that was done in Photomatix. Let's just compare first off the difference between the two. You can see when I switch back and forth this kind of glow that appears in images from Photomatix. It tends to work pretty well for Disney photos because you know, it's all fantasy, and you know, that kind of magical look is not necessarily a bad thing, but it is a difference between the two. This one tends to be much more realistic. People would not necessarily feel like you've done a whole lot of manipulation to this necessarily. This one, on the other hand, it just has this look. It's very unique. And again, it's a matter of taste. Some people don't like it, some people do. Depends on how heavily you use it. But this is the raw image that Photomatix spit out for us. And what I'm going to do is let's go in and make the same sort of adjustments here that we made in the last one, and then we'll compare the two and see where we go. So we're going to run through the same steps again. I'm going to run through quicker now that I've explained it previously, so I'm not going to go into detail about all of the different things I'm doing. It'll be pretty much the same steps that I did last time, and it's pretty much the same steps that I do on all of my photos. So I'm going to go auto to blue as usual, pull it back a little bit. That looks pretty good. Next, auto exposure, again too bright, which is typical, and we're gonna pull that back somewhere about, let's say about right there, and that all looks pretty good. Highlights, bring those down just a little bit, just so I get a little bit more detail back here in the eyes. So we've got that. Clarity on Photomatix shots is something that kind of helps a little bit, because we do have that kind of soft fuzzy look, and as you notice, as I increase the clarity on this, we kind of lose some of that soft focus look a little bit. So we'll bring that up just a little bit. We didn't do that in the previous one, but here it seems to make sense to bring it up a little bit, and so we've got that. Next, we're going to go down to detail. Again, we're looking pretty good on that. You know what? Let's look something here. We might have a little bit of noise here in the background, so we'll just add a little bit of noise reduction here just to kind of clean that up. And so we're looking good there. And then next we'll go down to effects, and again we'll pull the outer edges down just a little bit, just to pull things in towards the middle. And there we go. So that's pretty much the same thing. And then last we'll go back to the original shot. This is straight out of the camera, one exposure. Nothing combined here. So let's run this through the same steps again, and then we'll compare all three to finish this video out. So again, we're going to go auto to blue, bring it up just a little bit. Next, we're going to go auto on the exposure. We're going to bring that down quite a bit, actually. something in that neighborhood maybe. And then highlights looking pretty good. Yeah, maybe bring it down a little bit more. And you can see when I do that, notice that the eyes are coming back in. Now, what I see happen a lot of times, which drives me nuts, is people will crank this all the way down, and you will notice you'll instantly be able to spot this when you see gray lights. Lights are never gray, so if you are seeing gray areas in your lights, you've gone too far. So you need to pull it back a little bit to where you've got a bright light. It just is wrong to have gray lights, and I see that happen quite a bit. Shadows, let's see if we can bring those up just a little bit. Maybe we can bring those up a hair, and I say a hair, you can see we've added plus 60, and we've barely made any dent on the color in the sky by doing that. Blacks look okay. You know what, I think I'm going to pump up this exposure just a little bit brighter. That looks a little bit better now. So we've got that. Detail will do the same thing. Yep, looks like we've got a little bit of noise there in the sky, so I'm going to add some noise reduction there, and we should be good to go on that. And then finally down here at the bottom, let's pull the sides in a little bit for our vignetting. Not going to do as much here just because our sky's not as bright, so we're not competing against that for the viewer attention. So I'm just going to pull that down just a little bit. So let's real quickly run through the three images, and we'll talk about the advantages and disadvantages in comparing the three. So again, this is the normal shot, one exposure, adjustments done in Lightroom. The next one here is the 32-bit HDR. I think you can instantly see the amount of additional detail that has just added to every one of these leaves, how much brighter we've got, how much more color we've got in the sky. So those things are looking really good. And it just comes across as a picture that's really sharp. And then in the third one, we're going to go to the Photomatix, and here you can see we've got that color in the sky, but our details are going to feel softer. This is going to have more of a dreamlike look. You'll especially notice it around the eyes here if we go back and forth between the two. So if I click on it, there we go. Just the amount of detail. This just has a glow to it, which again is not necessarily a bad thing, but this one just has much more sharpness. For me personally, what I'm finding a lot now for my own photographs is that I am tending to lean more towards this 32-bit HDR combo now than I did in the past. In the past, it was almost exclusively Photomatix, which again gives your photos a real unique look, but they tend to look kind of soft and dreamlike. And at this point in time, I'm feeling like for my work, I'm liking this a little bit better. So those are the differences between the three. Again, this is the original. Then we've got the 32-bit HDR combo, and then we've got the Photomatix shop. So that's it. That is a comparison of those techniques using Lightroom. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any comments, please visit dailydisneyphoto.com where you'll find this tutorial, or this video will also be on YouTube. You can leave comments there. But I hope that you've learned something, and I hope that it helps you to expand your photo capability and give you more control over the images that you produce. Shooting it with the camera, in my mind, these days is only the beginning of the process. I think there's so much to be gained by using tools like Lightroom. Lightroom really is what a darkroom used to be. I'm old school I grew up developing black and white film and printing black and white photos and color photos in a darkroom. And even doing that, I know that we manipulated things there with dodging and burning and the way that we process the film and the prints and so forth. And the same thing really just has moved digitally to programs like Lightroom. So I really encourage you to learn how to take full advantage of tools like Lightroom to make the most of the image that you've captured, because the picture that you take is only the beginning of the process for the control that you have over the entire image. So again, I hope this has been helpful, and we will talk again soon. Thanks.